Let me ask you something that might catch you off guard. Do you apologize constantly, even when nothing is your fault? Do you feel deeply uncomfortable asking people for help, like it's somehow a burden to even need anything? Or maybe you've noticed that you downplay your own pain, brush off your struggles, and tell yourself you're fine long before you actually are. Maybe you over-explain yourself in conversations. Maybe you feel guilty for resting. Maybe you find yourself parenting yourself, reminding yourself to eat, to drink water, to sleep, because somehow nobody else ever really did. If any of that feels familiar, I want you to stay with me, because today we're going to talk about something that doesn't get said enough. Some of the habits you've come to think of as just who you are, your quirks, your tendencies, your personality, might actually be coping strategies. Strategies that a very young version of you developed not out of choice, but out of necessity. And the reason you're still running them now as an adult is because the nervous system doesn't forget what it learned to survive. This isn't about blaming anyone, and it's not about deciding your childhood was terrible, because childhood neglect doesn't always look dramatic. It doesn't require obvious abuse or visible suffering. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's the absence of things, the absence of emotional attunement, of being truly heard, of someone consistently noticing how you felt and responding with warmth. And when those things are missing during the years your brain is forming, you adapt. You become extraordinarily good at adapting, and those adaptations become habits, habits that look perfectly normal from the outside, habits that nobody questions, least of all you. So let's look at 10 of them, and let's do it with honesty and with kindness. The first one is chronic over-apologizing. You say sorry for taking up space. You say sorry when someone bumps into you. You say sorry for having an opinion, for needing something, for existing slightly inconveniently in someone else's orbit. And you've probably been told it's a nervous habit or that you're just polite. But psychologists who study emotional neglect describe this differently. When a child's needs are consistently dismissed or met with irritation, they learn very quickly that their presence, their wants, their feelings, their very neediness, is a problem. Sorry becomes armor. It's a preemptive softening. If I apologize before you can be annoyed, maybe you won't be. If I make myself small enough, maybe I'll be safe. The second habit is profound difficulty asking for help. And I mean difficulty not just in the sense of finding it awkward, but in the sense that it genuinely feels wrong, like you're breaking some unspoken rule. You'll exhaust every available resource, push yourself to the edge, and suffer in silence before you'll turn to another person and say the words, "I need help." There's a term in psychology called compulsive self-reliance, and it was first described by attachment theorist John Bowlby. It shows up most often in people who learned, early on, that the people who were supposed to help them either couldn't or wouldn't. When reaching out reliably leads to disappointment, the nervous system files that information away. Don't reach out. Handle it yourself. And then you spend the rest of your life handling everything yourself, calling it independence, not realizing it started as heartbreak. The third one is minimizing your own pain. You have a high threshold for what you let yourself call hard. You're sick, but you push through. You're grieving, but you tell people you're fine. Someone hurts you, and your immediate instinct is to rationalize it, to find reasons why it wasn't that bad, why you shouldn't be upset, why others have it worse. This isn't stoicism. This is what happens when a child's emotional experience is consistently invalidated. When you cry and nothing happens, when you say you're scared and no one responds, eventually you stop registering your own pain as signal-worthy. You turn down the volume on your own inner experience because nobody was listening to it anyway. The tragedy is that you carry that muted dial into adulthood and then wonder why you feel so disconnected from yourself. The fourth habit is hyper-independence taken to exhausting lengths. You refuse help not because you don't need it, but because needing it feels dangerous. You make decisions alone. You process grief alone. You build things alone. You've turned self-sufficiency into an identity, and on the surface it looks admirable, and parts of it genuinely are. But there's a version of independence that isn't strength. It's a wound that learned to look like one. The fifth sign is constantly feeling like a burden, not occasionally wondering if you're too much, but a background hum, running almost always, that tells you your presence costs people something, that your problems are too heavy to share, that people are tolerating you rather than choosing you. Developmental psychologist Alan Shore's research on early attachment tells us that a child's sense of their own worth is formed largely through the mirror of their caregivers' faces. When that mirror doesn't reflect warmth, when it reflects distraction, frustration, or blankness, children don't conclude that the caregiver is distracted. They conclude they are not worth reflecting. That belief doesn't just disappear when you become an adult. It relocates. It settles in as a quiet conviction that you are, fundamentally, too much and not enough simultaneously. The sixth habit is difficulty identifying what you actually feel. Someone asks how you're doing and you genuinely don't know, not in a deflecting way, in a real, searching, uncertain way, like the question is in a language you were never quite taught. Psychologists call this alexithymia, difficulty identifying and describing emotional states, and it's significantly more common in people who grew up in emotionally dismissive environments. When no one ever named your feelings with you, when no one sat beside you in your emotional experience and said, "That sounds like sadness," or "It makes sense that you're scared." You never fully developed the internal vocabulary. You feel things, but they come through as a kind of static, vague, pressured, undifferentiated. You know something is wrong, but you can't locate it. The seventh sign is people-pleasing that goes far beyond just being nice. You monitor the moods of everyone in the room the moment you walk in. You adjust yourself to match what other people seem to need. You shrink, expand, shift, and reshape yourself depending on who's in front of you, almost like you don't have a fixed shape of your own. This is called hypervigilance, and it's one of the most common outcomes of emotional neglect. When a child's emotional safety depends on correctly reading an adult's mood and responding accordingly, they become extraordinarily skilled readers of other people. They have to be. That skill saved them. But it comes at the cost of ever fully relaxing, ever fully just being, without scanning the room first. The eighth habit is having a deeply uncomfortable relationship with rest. You feel guilty when you're not productive. You scroll your phone instead of actually resting because lying still feels wrong, even vaguely threatening. There's a concept in psychology sometimes called earned security, the idea that some people only feel safe when they're useful. When love and attention were conditional, when they arrived after you achieved something, behaved well, stayed out of the way, you learned that your value was contingent on your output. Rest, by definition, produces nothing. And nothing, by that early logic, is dangerous. The ninth sign is over-explaining and justifying yourself constantly. You don't just tell someone your decision. You build a legal case for it. You preload your statements with reasons, caveats, and defenses before anyone has even questioned you. This is what happens when a child's experiences, feelings, and choices were routinely dismissed or challenged without acknowledgement. You learned that simply feeling something or wanting something wasn't enough. You needed evidence. You needed to prove your inner experience was legitimate. And now you carry that courtroom with you everywhere. The 10th habit is a persistent, low-level feeling that something is wrong with you, not a dramatic self-loathing, just a quiet, settled suspicion that other people have something you were born without, that they find things easy that are impossibly hard for you, that you are, in some fundamental and private way, broken, and no external achievement quite touches it. No compliment lands fully, because the wound isn't rational. It wasn't created by logic, and it can't be argued away by logic. It was created by the cumulative experience of not being fully met, again and again, in the years when being met was everything. Here's what I want you to hear, and I mean this carefully. None of these habits make you damaged. Every single one of them made perfect sense given what you were working with. Your nervous system did exactly what it was supposed to do. It adapted, it protected you, it got you through. The question now isn't, what's wrong with me? It's, what happened to me, and what do I want to do with that now? Because these patterns, as deeply rooted as they are not permanent. Neuroscience has shown us what therapy has known for years. The brain remains capable of new learning, new patterns, new experiences of safety. It is possible to learn, slowly and imperfectly, that you are allowed to take up space, that you are allowed to need things, that asking for help doesn't make you a burden. It makes you human. You were never the problem. You were a child doing the most sophisticated thing a child can do, surviving the emotional environment you were given. And now, as an adult, you get to decide what to keep and what to gently, carefully set down. If any of this landed somewhere real for you, I'd really love to hear which one felt most familiar. Drop it in the comments, not because it's data, but because sometimes just naming it out loud, even anonymously, is the beginning of something. And if this video helped, share it with someone who might need to hear that they were never broken. They were just adapting to something that should have been different.